So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Caitlin Arvindari Shergill. I'm the Manager of Outreach and Engagement for the University of Arizona Health Sciences. I'm happy to welcome you to this session of our UArizona Health Sciences Tech Talk Tuesdays. Tech Talk Tuesdays is a series of bi-weekly conversations all about engaging thought leaders, experts, researchers, and healthcare professionals in conversations around the advancement of technology and health sciences. We're happy to have Dr. Eric Lyons with the College of Agriculture, Life Sciences presenting on CyVerse today. Just a quick note for everyone, today's presentation will be recorded and will be sent out to anybody who registered for the talk, and will also be posted on the UArizona Health Sciences YouTube channel. After today's presentation, we'll open up at the end for questions. You're welcome to submit those via chat, and I'm happy to ask on your behalf, or you can just jump in at the end and ask yourself. And with that, I'll turn the time over to Dr. Lyons.
Thank you very much for that introduction, and thanks everyone for joining today's Tech Talk seminar. So I'm going to be talking to you about CyVerse, which is a large NSF project that's headquartered here at the University of Arizona, and its mission is to provide cyber infrastructure for life science research, and very importantly, train scientists in its use. And the whole reason CyVerse exists is due to the fact that biology is now turning highly quantitative, and we have a lot of data. And just to put that into perspective, 20 years ago, the first human genome was released. It was a culmination of somewhere between $1 and $2 billion worth of effort involving hundreds of people in dozens of labs around the world. And it took 10 years to complete. And over the last 2 decades, this cost of sequencing DNA or any other derivative thereof has just gotten exponentially cheaper over time. And the key thing that I want people to realize is that the reason this cost has decreased is based on technologies. So back in 2000, a new technology for generating sequencing data came online, which we called high throughput sequencing, or NGS, next generation sequencing. That was really the first version of this technology. And around 2007, 2008, a new version of this tech came online, which further decreased the rate at which this cost is decreasing for sequencing DNA. About 5 years ago, another version of this technology came online, and the price further dropped off. And in the future, all I can say is that we're going to keep seeing cheaper and cheaper technologies for generating data. And so what used to cost $1 to $2 billion and took 10 years, we now can do for under $1,000 in a day, and we can generate a lot of data. And what's great about this is what this has done is democratized our ability to generate data. So everyone can sequence pretty much anything that they want to, especially in terms of life science research. And Nanopore right now is leading that. Their devices keep getting smaller and faster and cheaper. And I believe the cell phone version is now online, or at least it will be soon. But what I want to emphasize is DNA sequencing technology is just one example of the kind of data that we now see flooding life science research. And there's lots and lots of sources of this. I'll talk very briefly about a project I'm involved with up in Maricopa, the world's largest outdoor system for phenotyping plants. We have the ability to generate data on anything that we want to, from hyperspectral visualization to laser scanners to flying things on drones. We are awash in data. But it sort of comes down to this next question that a lot of us are facing, which is, what do we do with all of these data? And as an example for the amount of data that we're dealing with, this is this large outdoor phenotyping robot. It's the largest in the world. This thing, which is based on a gantry system for loading and unloading cargo ships, that little central box in there is able to house a whole bunch of high resolution images and sensors, things that are very large, too big to fly on drones, experimental. And this thing can pilot those sensors up and down this field multiple times a day. And this thing took a year to build. It's over 2 acres of land in Maricopa, the climate of the future where everything is hot and dry almost all the time. And these sensors are able to generate upwards of 10 terabytes of data per day. This is a lot of data. And when we compare it to some of the other technologies out there, a drone can easily get about 1 terabyte of data. If you have just a tractor, you might be able to get about half of that. 500 megabytes of data. And we have the ability to deploy sensors all over this field, which also generate smaller amounts of data, but still a lot of data. And so we are literally drowning in data. And while I'm highlighting an agricultural-based project, this is happening, of course, across human health sciences, ecology research, remote sensing technology, looking at our entire planet. We have lots and lots and lots of data. And so the key challenge, of course, as we all know, is that having data is just the first step. We spend a lot of time as scientists and as researchers and as collaborators generating a bunch of data. And then what? Well, ultimately, we want to take this data and do something useful. And so I like to think about our progress through what we call the DIKW pyramid, and I'll go through that in a moment, in relationship to something like weather stations. So right now across the country, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of weather stations that are recording the temperature, the humidity, and sending those data out. And in and of themselves, they're not super useful as just individual data points. But what we do is we take those data and we transform it into information, things that are a little bit more palatable for the human brain to digest and understand. So we can take all those temperature sensors and use them to create thermal gradients of what temperature is happening around the entire country. And then we use that information to then generate predictions, which we use to understand knowledge. So for example, with weather, one of the things that we can do is take a look at what's happened today, what happened over the last hour, what happened over the last time period, and use it to make forecasts of what's going to be happening in the future. So that knowledge will be, what will the weather be like in an hour, in a day, over the course of a week? And so this is a snapshot of Tucson's weather that I took yesterday. And as chance would have it, we had an opportunity for rain this morning. So all of us got rain, some of us got a little bit of snow. And so with that knowledge, we now have the ability to do something wise, what we call wisdom. How do we change our behavior? How do we predict? And so for knowing what the weather is going to be tomorrow, we can plan and do something like bring an umbrella, which I completely forgot to do this morning, so I got rained on. But I hope everyone else here, of course, always does wise things with their knowledge that's out there. And so the goal when it comes to data is moving it up through this pyramid, taking those data, transforming it into information, taking that information, transforming it into knowledge, and then using that knowledge to do something wise. Because getting data is great, but the real impact happens when we have knowledge and we can then do something with that knowledge. So as we're thinking about the data that we're collecting out there, and everything is collecting data all the time, we always have these fundamental things about what problems should we be addressing. So should I bring an umbrella tomorrow? That often can be important. Often this data is collected on individuals to sell advertisements and products. Sometimes we use that data to feed the world, like we're trying to do with that gantry system. And for health sciences, how do we get better health outcomes for patients or for individuals or for populations? But fundamentally, at the end of the day, how do we do this? How do we take that information and transform it into wisdom? Well, we've got computers. Computers can handle data wonderfully. This is a screenshot of my former office, and I tend to collect computer junk. But here's just a list of all the computers that I was surrounded by. You can see that Commodore PET behind me. We have plenty of computers. In fact, we carry computers. This whole photo was taken with an iPhone. So much computing power. And what I mean by computing power is that Commodore PET, which came out in 1977, rocked it for the time as the second personal computer with a gigantic 1 megahertz CPU and 8 kilobytes of RAM. And that machine there, in today's dollars, costs about $3,400. On top of that, Commodore PET is a little tiny microcontroller called an Arduino Nano. This thing came out about a decade ago. It has 16 times the processing power of that Commodore PET, good amount of RAM and storage, and it costs just $2. And over next to it, I have a Raspberry Pi, which costs $35. That has a quad-core 1.5 gigahertz CPU on it. 1,500 times the processing power. And so what we've seen over time is this decrease with our ability to do computation. So that Commodore PET was $3,400 a megahertz. That Arduino Nano costs 12 cents a megahertz. And that Raspberry Pi is a fraction of a penny per megahertz. So we've got a lot of computing power, a lot of data, a lot of computing power. All we need to do is try to bring those things together. Oh, sorry, and here's the latest processor from AMD. The costs keep going down and down in terms of what we have access to for doing our computing. So all we need as scientists is really good infrastructure, cyber infrastructure. Many of us work at a desk, and it's really easy. All we want to do is to have a great, comfortable workstation, a comfy chair, a nice computer, a clean desk, a potted plant, and we're ready to get our work done. The core problem, though, when it comes to cyber infrastructure is we're often given these kinds of options, which is there's lots of stuff out there, but you just have to build it yourself. It's not too bad. So just imagine yourself going to Home Depot and you want to build yourself a workstation of nice desks to do your work. And instead you have raw lumber, you've got hinges, you've got screws, you've got tools. What do you do to put all these things together? If you're like most of us, when you try to bring these things home and put them together, things can go a little bit wrong inside the process. And so when it comes to cyber infrastructure, we're often told about, hey, just go to the cloud. Amazon has so many computers along with Microsoft and Google. You've got as much computing at your fingertips as you can imagine, and then orders of magnitude more. Just go to the cloud. It's a beautiful, happy, wonderful place filled with unicorns and rainbows. What can possibly go wrong? Well, if anyone there has actually tried to use some of these resources like Amazon, when you go to take a look at the products that they have for Amazon Web Services, you're presented with this incredible smorgasbord of technologies. And what is it that you pick and use in order to get your work done? And while I'm just showing Amazon, what I want to emphasize is that Amazon is just a small piece in this larger landscape of all the possible things that we could be using in terms of hardware and software and cyber infrastructure and data analytics in order to get our work done. And there's a lot that's out there. One of the things that I do is I teach a course called Applied Concepts in Cyber Infrastructure, where the whole goal is to teach students how to use distributed and scalable and cloud computing to solve real world problems. And so I have this midterm question, which is, hey, you've got 10 terabytes of data. I want you to go to Amazon's simple calculator and tell me how much it's going to cost to get this work done. And there's no wrong answer. I'm just curious to see what the students come up with. And I give them some requirements in terms of how the data can be computed. And I just want the results back in an hour. So tell me how much it's going to cost and show your work. And so these are very typical of the answers I get, which is from last year, the low was $16 to get the work done. The high was over $200,000. And the average is about $10,000 or so, which was about how much I had calculated. And what I want to emphasize about this is that this course is dedicated to teaching students how to figure this kind of stuff out. And even if you go to Amazon Simple Web Calculator, there's many ways to solve this problem. And it isn't that easy. It's easy to go astray in this process. And if I were to contract with a company and they said, oh, I'll do it for 16 bucks, chances are I'm just going to give them $16. They won't be able to do the work, and I just kiss the money goodbye. Similarly, if another person says, oh, I'll do it for $200,000, I'll probably say, wow, can I work for you? Because if you're a successful business, you're obviously having a very high profit margin there to bring all these things together. So when we think about this thing called cyber infrastructure, computational infrastructure, it is rapidly changing. And there are all sorts of new things that are coming online that are often, we hear them as buzzwords. We've got distributed data grids, we've got containers and virtualization and the need to orchestrate whatever those things are. We have distributed computing. I want to use those things, but I don't know how, and I have to get them all working together. And I need to not just get them working, but I have to get my data into them. I've got to get my algorithms in there. And more importantly, these things are distributed all over the place. Because we're here at the University of Arizona, we have access to some amazing computing resources. Outside of CyVerse, which is a national cyber infrastructure, We here have access to UA's research computing group, where we have 3 supercomputers. And from those, we have the ability to do all sorts of fun computational analyses. And then we have tie-in to things such as, of course, Zoom for doing our conferencing. We've got Google, we've got Microsoft, we have so many services, but how do we bring them together? And wait a second, it's not just about bringing the infrastructure. I've got all these applications and algorithms. Increasingly, we're using machine learning, stuff that used to be cutting edge research 5 years ago are now being taught in undergraduate classes. I've got these complicated software stacks. I need to get these programs working together. On top of that, a lot of the new developments are happening, and I want to be able to leverage other people's code. In my community, a lot of that is written in written in Python, it's written in R. These get packaged together. Sometimes they're presented as notebooks in Jupyter or Shiny apps in R. The community is active, lots of people working on this around the world. I want to use the latest and greatest. And so what we need are these generic solutions that really support this flexibility of all these different requirements that are required to get these problems solved. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we're dealing about this space called data science, bringing together these rich data resources, applying them to a specific domain science in order to advance that research forward. And of course, we never can forget about data, because at the end of the day, we are always going to be dealing with more data in the future. And importantly, those data sets are not just getting larger, but they're what we call multimodal. They're coming from different sources, different formats, different timings, and we have to have a way to bring those things together. On top of that, we now have wet data, which is sort of ironic here in Tucson, but we're dealing with data streams, which are constant sensors that are sending us data on a regular basis that we want to process in real time, as opposed to storing, caching, sending, then computing, so that we can monitor things in real time or near real time. And then we have these things called data lakes and data oceans, which are just larger pools of data that are out there that other people have generated. Maybe we're contributing to it or our collaborators are contributing to it, but we want to tap into those sources and bring down the data sets, integrate them, do new things with them. And of course, machine learning is exploding all over the place in terms of being able to assist with data integration, which is a very hard problem for anyone that's dealt with heterogeneous data sets. And then we want to be able to identify novel patterns using these algorithms, and ultimately you want to leverage those to predict outcomes. And at the end of the day, as a lot of researchers, we need to make our data available for other people to use through some practices known as FAIR, which stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reproducible. And that goes for everything that goes into the computation or machine learning. So what we're looking for is data science, where we bring together computer science, math and statistics, and of course our domain or subject matter expertise. And as you can see in this unicorn, when we talk about doing data science, we're talking about this intersection of these 3 massive domains. And the person that can do all of these things together at the same time really doesn't exist. This is what we call the unicorn, the person that can do everything out there. So how do we find those unicorns? How do we grow those unicorns? And importantly, how do we help become part of that unicorn? I'll stop at that point. So what we end up with is we have this fundamental problem where we have domain scientists, researchers, health scientists, life science researchers, astronomers, engineers, whoever. We're all generating lots of data, but we really need access to those computational scientists that understand the machine learning, the statistics, the computational methods, the cyberinfrastructure, the software stacks, everything that it takes to make sense out of this data. And oftentimes these groups live separately from one another. And what we want to be able to do is to facilitate the flow between these 2 groups in terms of the data and the analytics. And ultimately what we want to be able to do is bring them together so there's a little bit of overlap, because that's the overlap that we need to facilitate collaborations, because that is where unicorn magic happens. And this is one of the really key important things about data science or doing anything with large data sets, is we have to bring these kinds of people together. And importantly, when we're thinking about data science, what we're really talking about is team science. What can we do to facilitate bringing groups of people together with different expertise and making it easy for them to collaborate on the data, on the algorithms, and make access to that cyber infrastructure, all the computing resources that we need, as seamless as possible. And this really is where CyVerse comes into play. So CyVerse is a collection of many resources, but it's about making it easy to analyze what we call the full life cycle of data, from the moment we generate it to when we publish it, and everything that happens in between, including building those collaborations, helping integrate tools, and having them run seamlessly in a variety of compute resources. At the end of the day, CyVerse is there to help us ascend through this pyramid, get our way from the data all the way up to be able to make impactful decisions from those data in terms of scientific publications or improving some sort of outcome that we're interested in. So just to talk a little bit about that life cycle of data, it's modeled, of course, on the natural life cycle, whatever it may be, but at some point, data are generated. And then what happens after that is we have to worry about how do we move it, transfer it, integrate it, analyze it, visualize it, mark it up with metadata, make it available for search and discovery, share and collaborate with other people. Eventually, of course, we all want to publish it, which at that point now becomes fodder for the next set of experiments. It's going to get reused, integrated with new data, and the cycle repeats, and the cycle repeats, and the cycle repeats. And so at the end of the day, CyVerse is there to help make this easier, faster, and very resilient, especially around data loss or algorithm reproducibility. So to give a quick historical overview of what CyVerse was, this was a project that was really began in about 2007, 2008 from the National Science Foundation and was focused on the plant science community. It was an opportunity to bring together plant science researchers who were one of the first set of researchers generating large amounts of data in the NSF portfolio, and really working with them to bring in all of the computing needs to analyze those data sets. The platform went under 2 years of working with the community, understanding needs, and then working on the initial set of cyber infrastructures for a public launch in around 2008, 2009, and had this mission: design, deploy, and expand a national cyber infrastructure for life science research. And this is really key: train scientists in its use. It's not just about having it out there, it's making sure researchers can make use of it to advance their science. Project was successful. It was renewed in 2013, but with an expanded mandate. So not just focused on plants, now all of life science research. A couple of years after that, we were running into problems in this project, mostly because we had expanded far beyond life sciences, and we'd be talking with astronomers and they'd say, "We're astronomers. Why do we want to use a project called iPlant? We're health science researchers. Why do you want to use a project called iPlant?" So the project was rebranded in 2016 to CyVerse, which is an amalgamation of the words cyber and universe, really with this mission of transforming science through data-driven discovery. Got renewed again, and now what we're seeing is infrastructure getting replicated across multiple countries. So there's a CyVerse Australia, UK, and Austria, and many other countries that are interested in continuing to push it forward. Currently today, we have over 1,500 participating non-academic institutions, nearly 4,000 academic institutions, with almost 90,000 active users across the entire world. This is a general paradigm. There's labs out there, they're generating data, they need to get their analyses done, and at the end of the day, we need to work with people in terms of getting them trained, scaling what they can do, and making their impacts happen as quickly as we can, and connecting these all together. In terms of enabling this, CyVerse has a very nice set of softwares and infrastructures that are layered together, where at the bottom we have a bunch of foundational capabilities that give you access to cloud systems, high performance computing, the raw hardware, and the software layer just on top of that. We then make those things interoperate with what we call cyber infrastructure components. These are leveraging oftentimes established platforms out there, such as iRods for dealing with data management, a variety of ways to deal with user identity management, virtualization technologies. And then on top of that, we can build what we call end user facing platforms. Things like our discovery environment, which is a data science workbench that's web-based that allows you to go in, integrate data, integrate tools, take data, run analyses, share data, share tools with any collaborators that are out there. And the key thing that has made CyVerse successful is that researchers have access throughout this entire set of layers of our infrastructure. The top tends to be much easier for people to start out and use because they tend to be nice user interfaces that are web accessible. But as you move deeper into the stack, as people learn how to program, access application programming interfaces, APIs, they can get access to these lower levels and allow them to build their own set of resources to analyze these data for themselves and for their user communities, but to do so with much greater flexibility. And so at the end, it's about managing these data and everything that goes into it. And one of the core pieces of CyVerse is the CyVerse data store. It's one of the places where people first get started, they add data, and then they have the ability to connect it to whatever compute resources they have access to. It could be your desktop, it could be the UA HPC system, it could be one of the national supercomputers, for example, things run through Exceed. And it could be the commercial cloud, if you happen to have access to Amazon or Google. And to make all of this happen seamlessly, so we decrease the friction between each one of these entry points to one of these other platforms that are out there. And important to making CyVerse work, it's the need for this new generation of training. We have to support all levels of computational competencies, from the computer scientist to the domain person that is just starting off learning how to work at the command line. And importantly, be able to solve or support different kinds of training, from courses to special topic workshops, to things that are one-off, to do them at conferences, and not just for people in CyVerse to teach it, but for anyone who wants to teach others how to leverage their software. We want to be the supporting infrastructure and have done that in a variety of ways. At the end of the day, it's about improving research productivity through sharing our knowledge, sharing our tools, sharing our domain expertise, everything it takes to help someone go further with their science, and doing so together. For people that are interested, how do you get started? How do you learn these kind of things? We have a variety of training, we have a variety of online resources, and this is actually happening right now this week. We have a 10-week course, 2 hours a week, all virtual, called Foundation Open Science Skills. This teaches people sort of the basics about how do you get started, how do you think through this concepts of open science, managing your data, sharing it with collaborators, and leveraging a variety of tools and resources out there, CyVerse being just one piece of that. That we have advanced topics. So containers are a way to do virtualization of software. What this means functionally is, if you ever deal with software, if you've ever had problem trying to get it installed and running, especially in a Unix environment, containers are a way to package software together, make it easy to run, along with all the software dependencies it takes to make that work, and make it very portable. So if you want to run it on your computer, you want to run on the HPC system, it makes that kind of transfer of the tools very, very easy. That's happening yesterday and through tomorrow. We have a variety of people that have used it. We were one of the supporting infrastructures for Event Horizon. The core scientist that led a lot of the computing was here at the University of Arizona. He used CyVerse to coordinate the data across the entire collaborative network to do that first direct imaging of a black hole. We have a variety of webinars. This was one taking a look at 3D structures of proteins with Peter Rose at the University of San Diego. We have metagenomics seminars. How do you deal with new nanopore technologies, new tools such as NanoGday, for anyone that's used Ensemble for browsing genomes. If you take a look at their current course books and you go in there, you'll see that they have leveraged CyVerse so that individuals can post up their genomes or annotation files, and those then can get linked easily through CyVerse in order to have them displayed in their browsers. And if you have more advanced and complex tools, you can integrate full-blown web-based interactive visualization environments. This is for managing drone data. Anyone who wants to upload drone data, they can do so, register it in this particular app, and it's all getting served through CyVerse's infrastructures. So if you're interested, how do you learn to do things, any of these things in CyVerse? We've got webinars that we run every 2 weeks, similar to these tech talks. But this is just a list of the ones that have been happening over the last few months. So network analyses, leveraging ecological data, how to use core components of CyVerse like the data store, how do you use things like Orange for getting started with machine learning, how do you identify various types of features in sequencing data, and the list just goes on and on and on. And one of the other ways specifically that CyVerse is working with the University of Arizona are through postdoc and graduate student training cohorts. So currently we're running something with the Arizona Institute of for Resilience, also part of the Institutes for Environment, where a cohort of 10 graduate students are currently working with CyVerse. They're learning all the basics. And the idea of this is that these programs will train graduate students so that they can go back to their home lab, to their home department, share what they learn, and increase the data science competencies across the entire university. A similar program was run last year through UA Health Sciences, which we call the Data Science Fellows Program. These were postdocs, which were funded. Half their time was spent learning how to leverage CyVerse and other data science capabilities at the university, with the idea that they're going to get trained and they'll be available to help other people. This program was unfortunately delayed due to COVID, but there'll hopefully be an opportunity for this thing to start again in the near future as we emerge out of COVID. And so the question for everyone here is, just as you sort of think forward with your research, just think about where you'd like to be. And when it comes to dealing with your data, your tools, your analyses, learning how to do all this kind of stuff, we have so many ideas that we want to do. If only we knew how to navigate through all the cyber infrastructure. And I just want to let you all know, CyVerse is there. Our internal motto is, what can we do to help you go further? Because anyone that's dealt with data that they've generated, data other people have generated, tools, algorithms, the whole works, this is how you often feel, and this is what we want to try to avoid. And the way that we do this is we do it together. By bringing all of us around these problems, we can leverage your expertise, we can provide the training, we can bring in additional collaborators from across the university in order to do more together. And so with that, I'll stop and just leave you with this African proverb, which is, if you want to go fast, you can go alone. But if you want to go far, you need to bring it together.
Thank you so much. Now, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to send them in the chat, or if you just want to jump in and ask, feel free. I got one in the chat though while you were talking, Eric, that I want to ask. It says, what was one of the biggest challenges the team faced when rebranding to CyVerse rather than iPlant, and how did you overcome any? Oh,
yeah, I'll have to say one of the biggest, rebranding a project, especially one that's been running for 8 years, was one of the more challenging things that we had to do as a project. And I would have to say that the first real problem was picking a name, because you wanted a name that would resonate well. We needed to think about our global communities. We didn't want anything that was accidentally offensive. And it's easy to do so. You want to do something that you could capture the IP on. And at the same token, there was a couple of other considerations. So we ended up going with a made-up word, and we're able to protect it. And then when it came to the actual rebranding, it went very smoothly. And a lot of that came down to letting people know ahead of time, having a good communication portfolio in there, and just having a lot of media ready so that when people were coming in, it wasn't like, oh, what is this thing called CyVerse? It was months of, hey, iPlant is transitioning to CyVerse. These are the reasons why. And people just had no problem with it.
That's awesome. So you didn't have anybody shocked when you switched the name and everybody was like, oh, wait, where did iPlant go?
I mean, what's sort of funny, especially with a project of this size and longevity, is some people, worked with iPlant in the very early days. And now we're just coming back around and being like, oh, the CyVerse is really cool. And like, then they would see something like, wait, you were iPlant? You guys sucked. And it was like, yes, we've done a lot over a decade and really have tried to be responsive to this ever-changing landscape of computational infrastructures and, importantly, the needs of researchers.
That's excellent. And is CyVerse something that as well, like student researchers can use? If you had grad students working on projects that want to get involved, are they able to attend these events and gain access to CyVerse as well?
Yes, everyone is. We are here as a national cyberinfrastructure, and our users are everything from K through 12, oftentimes K through 12 teachers, lots of undergraduate courses leverage CyVerse infrastructure. When it really comes down to doing advanced research, it's usually graduate students and postdocs, some younger faculty, older ones like me. All we do is talk about stuff and then hope our students actually can do what we say is possible.
Excellent.
But it's everyone. And the important thing too is that when it comes to the training that comes in here, people are getting trained at all stages of their careers. So people who are just starting out, people who are interested to say, oh, this data science thing is neat. I'm an undergrad or I'm a high school student. I want to learn more. To more senior faculty members that are basically saying, look, in order to do the future that I see as important, I need to understand how these technologies work. I need to know what resources I need, what teams I need to build together. I need to have a little bit of proficiency on my own and do it. We've had everyone from visiting scientists. We have people taking sabbaticals. We always have cadres of undergraduates, graduates, and postdoc students working throughout the program. And one of the things that we try to do here at the university is plug into the rest of the data science activities, including Research Bazaar, which is open to anyone on the campus, a very nice informal way that meets twice a week just to talk about issues or how to get started, as well as support a lot of the introductory training opportunities, often through the carpentries. We have lots of certified instructors here, and they're constantly teaching boot camps and workshops in terms of how to get started, as well as opportunities like FOSS. So we're open to everyone.
That's excellent.
With research purposes, no Bitcoin miners. Sorry, I just want to be very clear about that.
Yes, no worries at all. I don't have any other questions in the chat. Does anybody else want to jump in and ask anything? Oh, yep, feel free. We have one person with a question. If you'd like to unmute, you can feel free to ask or send it via chat.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi, I'm Jean-Marc Felous. Oh, I'm sorry, the camera is off. There we go. I'm a faculty here in the psychology department, and I'm really, really interested. So just very quickly, the kind of data that we're using that we are producing are neural recordings from animals running around. And so we have the activity of single neurons recorded simultaneously, and we have gigabytes and even terabytes of those. We have a storage issue. So essentially, a place where we can store this and analyze the data in multiple ways. But more interestingly, we have a lack of expertise in data analysis in terms of data science, large data sets. So my question is there some sort of consulting that we can access to put these data in a central place and ask a sort of a challenge question? Can anyone find a pattern in this data set using this or that particular kind of approach? And are you interested in collaborating with us to try and find these patterns? Can we sort of access the community that you just mentioned, these 90,000 researchers, and see if anyone is interested in working with us this way through CyVerse?
That is a really good question. So normally the way collaborations, so I'm going to break down your question into a series of problems. So I have a bunch of data and I need to store it. And so CyVerse's data store, one of the things that I'll emphasize about it is we're managing, I think, upwards of 5 petabytes of data. The key thing about that is while we do have ways to make data publicly available and issue DOIs and the whole works around good data management, our data store is relatively expensive because it's about being able to do active research on it. So approximately, some ridiculous amount of the data in there, 99.99% of it, it's private data that's all being researched actively by a variety of collaborative teams. And I can talk more about ways that I've worked with large data sets and how I'm using it, which I think is indicative of how other people do it as well. The second thing is, so you want to be able to get some help with your data analysis. CyVerse doesn't necessarily have a way to do that off the top of my head, but that's a really interesting idea to basically have data challenges. Usually what people are doing on that front there is there's something called Kaggle data challenges. And if you do a search for, let me just quickly find the link for it. Kaggle data sets and competitions. So the Kaggle competitions is where, generally speaking, these kinds of things are happening, and I just put that into that. And they usually offer some small prize or bounty. I think sometimes money, sometimes coffee mugs. I don't know, but these are pretty fun places for getting people involved with trying to figure out new things. But that general idea of like, how do we leverage the community that's in CyVerse to open up some of these collaborations? I'm going to bring that one back to the team and talk about that a little bit. There may be some opportunities, and we just haven't explored in that particular kind of way. A lot of the collaborations tend to happen through local communities. So, you already have a bunch of people working on it here at the university. You're like, what I really need is someone who knows these kinds of pattern analysis. I'm going to go walk over to computer science and knock on doors. And that's usually what I do until you find someone who's like, oh yeah, that sounds really good. Can you co-fund this student? Like, sure, we need those expertise. This would be great to get some of the talent in there and bring this kind of folks in. Now, the third part is consulting. So there is a statistical, there's a couple of consulting groups on campus. I think both of them are in UA Health Sciences. One of them is a biostatistics consulting group run by Dean Billheimer. And then there's another one called CB4. It used to be run by Yves Lucier. He left recently, and I believe the person in charge of that now is Nirav Merchant. But give me 1 second. Statistical consulting in Arizona. Oh, and also in our research computing group as well. It looks like they have one. One of the things that I do want to emphasize is the talents that we have across the university, main campus, and health sciences are phenomenal. And it usually is just doing a couple of emails and figuring stuff out. So if you would like to, let me just go back to my first slide. Shoot me an email, and I'm happy to at least try to get you down the path of finding something that would be helpful.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Will do. Just a quick corollary question. Does the CyVerse cost any money to use from the part of the researchers on campus?
No, I mean, for the most part, it's fully subsidized by the National Science Foundation. There are examples when, depending on what the project is doing, we do need to enter into some sort of like cost agreement. And an example of that is, hey, I have a petabyte of data I need to store and do some active research on. And it's just like, we can't take all the NSF funds and dedicate it just to that kind of project. But for the most part, get an account, you can start adding data. There's some forms, which is like, hey, if you need a data store allocation increase, usually up to like 10, 20 terabytes, we just sign off on that. We just want to have a recording of it for reporting back to NSF. Then as you start to go above that, we want to have some conversations just to make sure that we're supporting you well. It's not just becoming a dumping ground for dying data. We want to make people process, move on, and get their data out to the community.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Yeah, excellent questions.
Great. Does anybody else have any last questions? All right, I think that's it. Thank you so much, Eric, for your talk today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And again, as soon as that recording is ready, I'll send out a link to everybody.
Fantastic. Thanks all. And if you do have any questions more about CyVerse, always feel free to reach out to me. We're here on campus, and one of the things I would love to see is the university taking much more ruthless advantage of CyVerse, especially since it's located here.
Agreed, definitely. I'm going to drop your email in the chat as well, just so people can copy and paste it if that's fine with you.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.